My experience voting in the presidential election was not necessarily a positive one.
I was in line for 7 hours. It was tough.
You know, I spent 9 hours in a gym packed full of hundreds and hundreds of people.
Al llegar cerca para la votación, ya habían cerrado la votación. No pude votar.
I think it's been a systematic effort to reduce turnout in poor neighborhoods.
This is the true story of how a prepaid wireless company confronted a horrible truth within the American election system. We are a nation founded on the idea that all are created equal. Not only are all American citizens guaranteed the right to vote, it's the single right that appears most often in the Constitution's text, 5 times in 4 separate amendments. But for some Americans, voting is very difficult.
Complaints about the fewer number of polling places.
States have been eliminating polling places on a massive scale.
The voting experience in America depends mostly on where you live.
What we've found is that minority communities, Latinos, African Americans, usually have a much longer time to wait to vote.
The reduction in voting hours in polling places has reduced the turnout of people who want to vote.
Unequal voting access is definitely a problem in our country.
In early 2016, Boost Mobile and its advertising agency saw an opportunity to do something about this problem. The idea was simple, at least in theory. Boost Mobile stores are located in low-income and minority neighborhoods, the same areas where voting access is most problematic. Could Boost Mobile stores be turned into voting stations to make voting in these places easier and more accessible?
What if we were able to actually solve the problem of voter inequality and actually put polling places in Boost Mobile locations? And that was kind of the genesis of it. At that point, it was more about, not is this going to happen, is how do we make this happen?
We really had to figure out and really get inside the process of how we vote and how each county decides what can be a polling station.
Is it a very easy, smooth system throughout the nation? No. No.
One thing that most people don't understand is that the elections are controlled at a county level, not at a state or a federal level. So each county has different jurisdiction over the rules and regulations for how voting happens in that county. We reached out to every county in the United States with a Boost store, which turned out to be 817 counties in 48 states. We had a team of over 30 people for about 7 months working on this.
Once the team had overcome the logistics of calling hundreds of counties, they soon faced another, even bigger obstacle: the election officials themselves.
We thought that a lot of counties would appreciate the offer, but we were surprised to find that we actually had a lot of resistance. So many counties told us they already have enough polling locations, even if they had long lines in the past.
From the different responses, the one that was the most, difficult to understand was when the county said, we have enough. And we would ask then, do you anticipate there's going to be long lines again? And they would say, well, we have enough. So we really didn't get past that question. And then when we would ask a little further, well, is there anything else we can do? There won't be any long lines. Basically, they were not interested in going further.
The team began wondering why they were facing so much resistance from certain counties. Why wouldn't officials want to make voting as easy as possible? They reached out to experts for answers.
Making it difficult to vote at every stage of the process has been a strategy to suppress part of the electorate.
There is a game that is played where the polling places are manipulated in order to suppress voter access.
And what they're really doing is they're suppressing the vote, not preventing fraud and making more accurate elections.
It's clear that they are reducing the participation, in particular, of racial and ethnic minorities. We have a polling process that makes it difficult for many voters, so limited number of polls, limited polling hours.
Well, generally, when they suppress the vote, they're successful at suppressing the vote of the poorest economic echelons in society. And so it takes the voice away from those people. So the rich are able to give money to influence the political process, and they get to vote more easily than everybody else. And so it's truly unfair.
There's no doubt that if we had more voting locations, more polling places, that would make a huge difference, especially if they are in low-income communities and places where voter turnout is historically even lower than the rest of the population. So that would make a big difference, and it's something that's really needed.
When we started this program, we thought that it was a lack of resources that was creating the long lines and the problems. As we went through the process, I really believe that this is a systemic problem.
The team realized they were working within a system that in some cases intentionally makes it harder for people to vote. They began wondering if their solution was feasible. But then, a breakthrough.
After 7 months working on it, with over 30 people, hundreds of phone calls, it didn't look like it was going to happen, and then we got our first store, and then we got another, and then another.
Persistence was everything. I mean, everybody was dedicated to the project, and I mean, that's what it took.
After hundreds of phone calls and months of work, they managed to find several election officials willing to stand up against inequality and willing to take on the risk of trying something completely new.
So I serve as the chairman right now of the U.S. Election Assistance Commission Board of Advisors, and that's the federal body, the actual commission that oversees certification of voting systems. The beautiful thing about retail is parking, ADA accessible stores, a location that is already established and the public, and there's foot traffic. Those are all very positive things. So I would really question anybody that's not getting involved in this because it just makes sense.
With the help of their local government partners, on November 8th, people voted at Boost Mobile stores across the country.
So our storefront has been open since 6 a.m. this morning, and voters have been floating in and out.
I'm excited to vote for the first time.
It turns out making voting even slightly more convenient can make a big difference. In Boost precincts, voter turnout increased 23% over 2012, an increase 3 times higher than the national average.
We actually became, for that day, a part of the voting experience in America. Our brick and mortar structure no longer belonged to Boost Mobile. It no longer belonged to the store owner, but at that day, for one day, belonged to the American people and became part of our democratic system. And that was incredible.
Unequal voting access continues to be a problem in the United States, and Boost Mobile hopes to inspire other brands to join the fight.
It is our hope that we have other brands sign on. It's not a competitive thing at that point. It's more about just making sure that there's some responsibility at the corporate level, and that some of these larger businesses that have the resources and have the spend can go out and serve their communities.
Ultimately, the problems that plague U.S. elections can be fixed, but it's up to the American public to hold our elected officials accountable and demand equal voting access for all.
Well, every time we have a public meeting, we pledge allegiance to the flag with liberty and justice for all. And that liberty is grounded in our right to vote. But what if all people don't get the right to vote? That's fundamentally unfair. And it erodes the fundamental basis of a democracy. How can you have a democracy if people have differential voting rights? That some people have a greater right to vote than others? Democracy is compromised.
Voting has to be a fundamental right, no matter who the people are.